Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm one of those that believes you should kind of start on time. And I don't punish those who are here on time by waiting on those who are not. Does that make sense? So maybe I'm a little, the Chinese word for that is lihai. You're very gung-ho, driven. So I'm a little bit driven. And with that in mind, that's my sermon for this afternoon. I better not do that one. Okay. As I lead to this session, I want you to understand. I prepared 5 things to teach in 24 hours. Y'all understand? It's a pretty busy block of time. And so I put this together, and then I put it together again. And while they were speaking this morning, I had the guy take slides out that I didn't want to do. All that to tell you, I'm not sure where I'm going and what I'm going to do completely. Does that make sense? Y'all who have led enough, the thing that always made my wife nervous was when every once in a while I stand up on Sunday morning going, I've prepared a sermon, but I think I'm supposed to say something else. And I can see my wife just slowly slide down in the seat, And with that, we'll talk about that when you get home. Look, So, she's not here. So, the idea, and also with this, when I go, we're going to try this again, right? When I get home, I'm going to write this one again, because I'm starting with that what I want to talk about today is for those of you, the ones I want to target in this are those of you who come with a pastoral heart instead of a missional heart. So if you're a pastoral person, I'm here for you today. Make sense? Now I'm going to tell you in all honesty, we just watched 4 extraordinary testimonies. And you're thinking in your church, I don't have this. And the truth is, you don't. Most of you don't. These were extraordinary people with extraordinary stories. Most of you have ordinary churches filled with ordinary people. Does that make sense? I'm trying to be really, really honest with this. I'd love to say, this is what you ought to be doing. But for most of you, you looked at this and go, that's way beyond anything my church can do. I don't have these people. We don't have this. We don't have anybody with this burning, driving, missional passion that everybody's talking about. I have an ordinary church or ordinary people. What can we do? Now, that's not to disparage the extraordinary people who are standing up here. You understand? You're extraordinary. Now, you are. And I understand this. I told somebody yesterday, nobody's ever called me normal. Jeff, you're so normal. I've never heard that. I've heard all sorts of other things, some good, some bad, but nobody's ever called me normal. So I understand this. But what I want to talk to today are ordinary pastors with ordinary churches wanting to do something more than what you're doing. You don't necessarily want to go here, but can you lead your church to here? Does that make sense? That's really been powerful on me this morning as I listened to this going, this was beautiful up here. But before you sit here and say, well, before you dismiss this saying, I just can't do this, let's figure out how to move your church from here to here. In Chinese, the phrase is ibu, ibu. One step, one step. Okay? So before you go back to your church and say, hey, we ought to do this real radical new ministry way out here in your church, goes, ah! You know, and you're now in a new church somewhere. Let's figure out how to go ibu, ibu. Does that make sense? With that in mind, that was really on my heart and soul. So I'm not sure how much what I have is going to work. I'm going to go through this. And if you have questions or anything, talk to me through it, okay? The first thing I want us to do, first of all, I showed you yesterday the front porch of our house. This is the back porch, okay? And those woods there, it starts there and it goes up. That's the edge of the mountain. And we own about 100 acres of hickory nuts and squirrels. We'll never go hungry. If you can't eat hickory nuts, you can eat squirrels. You know, and I tell you, it gets tiresome eating squirrels and hickory nut pies, but you can live on it. So I took out the first slide, so I'm not sure how this is going to work. Let's see here. Okay. The first thing I want to talk about, in order to be missional, I think you need to map your community. Okay? What's the goal? Let me start with some underlying questions. Who owns the church? Okay, who owns the church? Jesus, right? The answer to every question I ever ask is Jesus. I don't know, just Jesus owns the church. It's his church. What did he say? Upon this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Who's going to protect the church? Jesus. If Jesus is going to protect, if he's going to build the church, and if he's going to protect the church, what does he not need you to do? He does not need you to protect the church. What does he need you to do? He needs you to be out in the field, right? That's what he sends you out into the field. He says, y'all go out. I've got this. I've got the church. It's mine. The gates of hell are not going to prevail. I've got it. You go out into the field. Does that make sense? Now, yesterday I talked about what does a missionary do? What does a missionary do? What's the task of a missionary? Anybody remember? Share the gospel? Yeah. The goal is to reach an entire city or people group or area for Christ. As you're looking at how to be missional in your setting, it's simply this. My goal is to reach and then put X, whatever your X is for Christ. That can be your county. It could be your city. If you live in a big city like Shauna does, 5,000 people. If Kobe is your field, that's a big field, right? Maybe you have a county. Maybe it's a specific people group. You're working. That's literally a different kind of people group that you're working with. But whatever that is, that's your strategy is to reach that group for Christ. Does that make sense? Now, you have to have this in your head before we can start on all this other. It's God's church, Jesus' church. He's going to protect it. He wants us out in the field. Where does he want us? He wants us in the area that he's given us. Our job is not to build the church. Our job is not to protect the church. Our job is to be in the fields reaching our area for Christ. See, all that underlies the premise before we get started on all this. Everybody with me now? Now, mapping. Why do we want to map it? It helps you, mainly, if anything, it helps you to see your community. It helps you to see the holes in your community. I'm big about doing things to help you see holes. When I was in seminary, I worked at a little country church outside of Louisville, 40 miles south of Louisville, and then 8 miles outside of Bardstown, if y'all know the area. Bardstown is where all the Kentucky bourbon is made. Heaven Hill, Very Old Barton, Maker's Mark, Jim Beam, it's all in that area, okay? Country folk, we're way out there in the middle of nowhere, and I asked, can we do a survey of the community to find out where people go to church? Oh, we know everybody. I said, literally across the road, up a little hill, I said, well, what about those people? And they said, that's a St. Clair's. They don't go to church anywhere. I go, well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. What if we just go up there and invite them? But they don't go to church. That's my point. Yeah, but they don't go to church. So I take one of the deacons, we go up there and invite them. They have 2 teenage boys. The 2 teenage boys come down. One of them is the chairman of the deacons and the chairman of the search committee right now. You understand? That doing a survey is a form of mapping. But mapping helps you to develop a strategy for your entire. I'm going to show you this. I put these in. Like I said, I keep redoing this and keep redoing this. I may not get past mapping. I don't know. Let's see. I picked out Billings, Montana. I lived there for a while, so I know Billings. This is a map of Billings, Montana. Now let's see if I can get this to do correctly. I put in, these are the blue is the Yellowstone River. That, what color is that? Red, brown? Okay, I work with about 4 colors in my world. That's red to me. Whatever color that is to you, that's a set of bluffs. On the north side of that is a community up here, and down here is another community. So that's what I did was I put in natural barriers. The first thing you need to do when you look at your map is, what are the natural barriers in your county? Now, I'm not going to do it with this one. Well, let me go on. I'll come back to that. Then I put in another set of barriers. These are roads. The red the red going diagonally is the interstate. The other one, 3, goes to Great Falls, and then that straight line there is a road on the west end of town, and it separates 2 different communities. Now, in your map, you might need to do some roads. May be natural areas of demarcation in your community. Does that make sense? They live on this side of the road, live on that side, like the tracks, like they talk about. Well, you might also put in, because I'm doing a city here, it's different than a county. In a county, you might put in different government tracks or different school tracks. These people go to this school, and because of that school, that forms a community. Does that make sense? And so what you're going to start with are different communities. The yellow one down here, that's the community I lived in. That's the poor part of town. Yes, I lived in the poor part of town because I was poor. The Heights up here was kind of the bluish, white-collar people. They weren't the real white-collar. They were the working class, but probably not hourly workers. Maybe no, they weren't upper middle class. They were really middle class. Does that make sense? But you're getting the idea. This area, again, is another community bounded by barriers. See the barriers it makes? See, each one of these is a community bounded by barriers. And one more. The west end of town. Each one of these is a different community bound off by these natural barriers. Now I'm going to look at the map again. these yellow ones are the poor parts of town. This south side of Billings, very poor, very rough area. Okay, and then our area was poor working class where I lived. Again, that's the mid-level working class people, and then the wealthier people lived in the green sections. Am I making sense with all this? You understand? One of the things you need to do is begin to, as you do this, as you begin to map this with church members so they can see it with you. Next thing we did, look, where are the churches in Billings? At least this is where the Baptist churches were. If I'm using this as an illustration. Everybody understand that? I'm using this as an illustration. I would also, if I was really doing this for real with the church, we would put in churches of other denominations so that we could see everything that was going on in the communities. But for illustration purposes, I'm just showing it to you like this. Okay? Everybody understand? Okay. So don't come back to me saying, I got an aunt lives in Billings and she goes to there's a fine church in this yellow section. Okay. I know there is. I'm just trying to, again, illustration. So what you're seeing, what the map shows here is 3 areas where churches are needed. Make sense? Everybody with me on this? Most people wouldn't know that until they saw it on this map. And then when your church sees it, they go, oh, there's a hole right there. You can map all sorts of different ways. I've shown you just 2 very different, one just general barriers, the other one by economic levels. You can do it by educational levels. You can do it, there's all sorts of different ways that you can slice this pie, the different ways to make maps. What I'm trying to show you is leading your church to look at a map can help them to see places where churches are needed or where new ministries are needed. Yes. There's all sorts of places to go. There's all sorts of census information online. Check with your denomination leadership. Check and see if they have something called Scan US. Write that down. Scan US is an excellent tool, but it's too expensive for a church to have. I think it's $2,900 a year. But a lot of times your denomination will have it and can give you Scan US reports. Scan US will tell you they've divided, let's say my area, Lockwood up there in the yellow, they've divided every demographic level. You know, we're talking about upper, lower, middle. They've divided into 43 different things. And they'll tell you that in your neighborhood, 682 people read outdoor life, drive four-wheel drive trucks, drink Pabst Blue Ribbon. You know, 643 drink Michelob, and I mean it's very detailed. It's made to help advertising agencies do specific advertising, but for churches it helps you to see this is your community, and it goes down to their material goes down to microgrids, so that you can take a block area, one city block, and look at that one city block. And so if you got a city map, you can see where the different 43 demographic levels live in that. So Scan US is a great way to do that. And if your denomination doesn't have that, you might want to see if you can't push them to do that. And you know, I don't know how the Kansas-Nebraska convention works, but I'd be willing to ask them for it for you if that would help you. You know, again, I'm not into, if I had it, I don't have it myself personally. If I had it, I'd run any report I could for you. But what I'm saying is, you can go online and get a lot of information, And then the Census Bureau breaks things down into census tracts, and you can get information, pretty detailed information down to a census tract just online if you keep looking. And a census tract may be, in New York City, may be a single city block. In rural parts, in ultra-rural areas, it may be an entire county. But a lot of times it'll be a little village will be one census tract. The rest of the county will be a census tract. You might get 2 or 3 tracts in your county. And so you can get the information down to that level. Good question, though. Okay. Everybody with me? Shall I move on? Do you understand? We're not asking you to spend a lot of money here. This is just, hey, church, let's just look at our community. Let's take if you were in my class yesterday, we need to make a good examination before we make a diagnosis. A lot of times we think what people need is Jesus. And that's the right answer, but we start in the wrong place because we haven't studied the people we're trying to reach. Like I was saying yesterday, I met with a Taiwanese lady at lunch yesterday. And if you start with the Roman road, she's lost. She doesn't, I shouldn't use that word. She's confused because she doesn't know she's lost. So it started Genesis. God created you. Shangdi Chuanzala Ni. God created you. He created us. He had a plan for us. And the word for sin in Chinese doesn't work. Okay? The word for sin is sui ren. Sui means a federal criminal. So you ask, have you ever sinned? Ni shi sui ren ma? Are you a federal criminal? No, I'm not a criminal. That might work for you. I don't okay. But, for most of us, they're going, no, I'm not a criminal. But what you can talk about is guanxi. Guanxi is relationship. So you can say, you and God's original plan is for you to have a perfect relationship. But you, Gunshang Dita Guanxi, Ni Bei Po Huila, you took God's perfect relationship, and it's like a lamp. You didn't come and accidentally knock it off. You came over and picked it up and broke it. Your relationship with God, you intentionally broke it. And so now God has turned his face from you, and he will not hear your prayers. Isaiah 59:2. And you can't fix it. They're all going, Zimaban, what can be done? You need a mediator. There's one mediator between man and God, the man Jesus, who died for our sins. You understand? All of that is understanding Chinese culture. All mapping does is helps you to see where, and to help you to begin to understand these people think differently than us. That's why they're not coming to our church. I was in a church a few weeks ago, a nice little First Baptist church in a little town of about 800. And they're going, why are we not reaching our people? How can we? They just don't seem to be interested in anything we do. About that time, somebody in a big old 4-wheel drive truck went by. I had to wait till he got by to continue speaking. I said, "Oh boy, out there in that truck, does he want anything you have in here?" They go, "No, we don't have anything that works for him." Therein is your problem. You got to learn how to speak redneck. And they go, well, we're a redneck. We're just out here in the redneck community. Yes, but you've learned Baptistese. And you don't know how to communicate with lost people anymore. We're going to have to learn a new language. That's why I say, what's the first thing a missionary does? He learns the language and the culture. We're not talking about rocket science here. We're not talking about doing some kind of radical new thing. We're not going to paint your inside of your building pink. We're just trying to say, learn the culture, map it out so that you can begin to see where things are and what needs to be done. Next thing, look at where God is already at work. Does the community already have a church? Can Christians be found in the area? Are people in the area receptive to the gospel? It may be that the best thing you can do is help the church in that community. What if there's a little church out there that's struggling to reach their community? What if you can go out and infuse them with some leadership and some help and get them healthy to reach their community? Now, for the pastoral people, you need to understand, if you do this, it doesn't benefit your church. You're not going to grow in numbers. You're not going to get more money from it. You're just going to lose people who are going out to help that church. Does that make sense? Y'all understand that? That's the going from 400 to 100. You know, you lose. You're giving up people. They're going. And I know you hear testimony after testimony. Yeah, if you give them away, God will give them back to you. And sometimes He does, and sometimes He doesn't. Sometimes you just give them away, and you have less people and less resources. I'd give my whole church away if I could reach my whole county for Christ. I'd dissolve my church if by dissolving my church I could reach my entire community for Christ. See, the thing is not about your church, it's about the kingdom. And that's so hard to get in our heads. It's so hard for me to get in my head. It sounds real good until you're going, Jeff, now you're messing with my paycheck. You're messing with my legacy. I told, when I started in the ministry, I decided 2 or 3 things up front. My wife, when we started dating, I told her, I said, you need to understand, I have no desire to have a legacy. Which sounds pretty good when you're 25, but you know, when you're 60 years old and you begin to look and see that death is closer than it ever has been, you're going, you kind of have a little bit of legacy. You know, no, I don't need a legacy. I don't need a reputation. And the last thing in the world I'm ever going to have, Melba, told my wife, is a career. I've never moved up. I've never taken since I started, I've never put in for a single job. Every job I've had, somebody has called me, contacted me, asked me to do it. Sometimes it was a step up, and sometimes it was a step down. And those things don't matter to me as much as obeying what God wants me to do. It's His church. I'm His servant. I'm at His beck and call to do whatever He wants. My goal is not to grow a church, it is to grow the kingdom. And so that means I have to look at where God is at work, and then I have to work with those who will work with me to reach my community for Christ, and then I'll do whatever it takes to help them be successful in reaching this same community for Christ. Realizing that it may affect my income. It may affect my future. I'm preaching. I need to go on. Next one. See if this makes sense. Play well with others. That goes along this same line. Join others in your community. You don't compromise on your theology, but you work together where you can. The goal is cooperation, not competition. I told that yesterday about cooperation. Right? It's very important that we move away from competition. We just have competition built into us in Western culture. Like I said, everything is competition. Driving is competition. Like I was telling you yesterday, standing in line to pay your electric bill is competition. Now, we just compete about everything. And I'm very competitive. My wife and I play games a lot at night. And I like to win. And she likes to win. And when we had children, I like to beat them. You know, they're 6 years old. I beat them at tic-tac-toe. And they go, Dad, won't you ever let me win? No. You got to beat me on your own. The revenge on that is God gave me 2 daughters that are smarter than I am. So at about 12 years old, they started stomping me and everything and took great joy in that. And then I quit playing, and they go, come on, play, Daddy. No, I ain't playing with y'all. I lose every time I play with y'all, because I'm competitive. Well, playing with my girls and being competitive there is one thing. I'm not competitive when it comes to church. I'll give my people away. I'll give my resources away if it will advance the kingdom. Now, I'm not giving it away for stupid. And I'm not throwing resources down a black hole. But if it'll reach people for the kingdom of Christ, I'll give it to you. Next one. This one has really come to me. Everybody knows 2 Timothy 2:2. Can somebody read that out loud for me? Well, y'all fail at Bible drill, I just tell you. Y'all have Bible drills. My kids did those Bible drills, and they go, 2 Timothy 2:2. It's always fun to bring all the preachers up and let them do it, Hezekiah, Hezekiah. It ain't in the Bible. Go ahead.
And the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others.
Okay. Do you hear that? Did y'all hear that verse? That has become a life-changing verse for me since I went overseas. Because what it's saying is, what is success? You know that you're successful in ministry. Listen to this. When you get your discipleship 4 people deep. He said, what you've heard from me, what you heard from me, that's Paul to Timothy, that's 1:2. You pass on to others who pass on to others. So once you get your ministry 4 generations deep, you can begin to call it successful. Nothing less than that is success. Boy, I don't hear any amens, and preach it, brothers. Well, not. Oh,
maybe I shouldn't chime in, but I never use the word success. I use the word significant.
right.
Because people use all kinds of analogies for success, but I use significant. Are you making
Right.
a significant difference?
Right. And the thing is in this is you hear the challenge. It's the 4 generations. When I was in Taiwan, I started working with a pastor named Nick. And then Nick started mentoring a guy named Chin, And then Chin started working with a guy, Daimu, I think. He was Indian, so I'm not good with Indian names. And then he's done another person who I don't even know. We've moved this 4 generations deep. I still keep up with him from overseas. I meet with him on a regular basis. But it's 4 generations deep. That's what we're looking for in the gospel. When we say, I don't know what y'all are like. That's one of the good things about coming from outside. I don't know. So I'm not speaking. Steve didn't tell me to tell y'all this or anything. But in Baptist circles, when you say we need to make disciples, the first thing we think of is we need a program. Okay? We need a discipleship program. We're so programmatic focused. We're plug and play. I get this book, I teach this class, you're now disciples. No, you're just informed sinners. Remember? The discipleship it's like fellowship. It doesn't take place in another building called Fellowship Hall. Discipleship is not a class. It is one-on-one, life on life. It is, I'm going to go visit somebody in the hospital. Hey, would you come with me take somebody with you. And they go with you. And then sometimes they sometimes they wind up discipling you. Does that make sense? When I first started out, I was in northern Michigan, and thought, I want to teach my people how to witness. I got the material. We're going to teach a witnessing class. Y'all know how this goes. You get the class, and it was very difficult. Y'all know? Have y'all ever heard of EE? Buddy, I learned FIREGOGO, the whole acronym of how to go. Friends, interests, religious, exploratory questions, and all these different things you learn. It's very difficult to learn, and I was trying to teach Kurt, and Kurt's trying to learn it. And each week we go out and witness to people, and and in our community, we don't door and say, we're with Grace Southern Baptist Church, and they go, and I want to ask you about being a Christian. And they go, I'm not Christian, I'm Catholic. Wham! Okay, do we write that down as a prospect? How do we mark that? And I'm trying to witness, and Kurt's watching me. And so finally one day I said, Kurt, it's your turn. What? I said, yeah, you just give it a whirl. So Kurt goes up the door, knocks on the door. We've been out a bunch of times, I'm thinking, Kurt's ready. Guy opens the door, he says, we're with Grace Southern Baptist Church, and I just want to ask you, are you willing to become a Christian right now? I looked at Kurt, what are you doing? He goes, do you want to become a Christian? I thought, you've done this so wrong. I can't tell you. After all these weeks of training, we've got 13 weeks I've done training. I've taken you down every week. And the first thing you ask the guy is, does he want to become a Christian? You've ruined the whole thing. The guy says, my cousin's been talking to me about that. What would I have to do? Kurt says, well, you just pray with me. And he turns, and the guy prays, receives Christ, and he joins the church, gets baptized, joins the church, and is still in the church today. We get back in the car. Kurt leans over to me and says, see, it ain't that hard. Who's discipling who? I want you to understand that wonderful moment doesn't take place in a classroom. It takes place with somebody with you. When I first started out in ministry, I kept feeling like I had to do it all myself. One of the hardest things I had to learn how to do was humble myself and allow other people to join me. I thought somehow that if I let other people in on what I was doing, the church might not think I was necessary. Isn't that stupid? I've always had this thing of, I've always lived this life where when I went to school, I was one of the poor hillbillies from up in the holler. When I went to college, I took VOTEC classes. I mean, when I showed up, I took English as a second language, going, what are y'all talking about? And everywhere I've been, I've had to prove myself. I can do it. And that's an idol in my life that I've had to crucify again and again and again, that I am worthy and that I am, I have to push and push. And God says, let others join you. Let others be in the harvest. Let disciple others to do the work. Well, okay. As you do this, remember your idea in discipling them is to encourage them to do new ministries. It's not for you to, it's not your idea to come up with all the new ministries. And it doesn't take long in pastoring until somebody comes to you and says, hey, pastor, I have an idea. I always thought that meant I have an idea for you. I learned very quickly how to say, great, how do you want to do that? They go, oh, no, pastor, I meant for you. No. You don't understand. My job is to equip you to do the idea you just came up with. They go, well, I don't have an idea. Okay, Go, I had a guy in Florida one time come forward and say, Jeff, would you pray with me that I quit smoking cigarettes? At the invitation, piano's playing, people singing. I said, yeah, dear God, I pray for Chuck that he'll quit smoking cigarettes. The next cigarette he smokes, I pray that it'll make him so sick it'll put him in the hospital. He goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm praying that you'll quit smoking. He said, I didn't mean that. I said, go sit back down. You know, until we're serious about what we're doing and until we believe God. But when people come to you, say, here, they come to you going, I got this ministry idea. Well, let's sit down and figure out how you can do it or how you can help find people to do it. I'll help resource you and support you, but I'm not going to do it. Does that make sense? Okay. Part of being missional is learning how to give that away. Also then, preach missionally. Preach about missions. Make sense? That's a simple one, right? Use Acts 1:8 as your roadmap. Jerusalem, all Judea, Samaria, the uttermost parts of the earth. With that in mind, okay, ready? I'm going to give you my way out of left field idea. If I was ever to pastor a church again, I'd push to have everybody in the church get a passport. If we're going to preach missionally, we got to prepare missionally. Now, why would I want you to have a passport? You never know. You never know what God's going to do. You think you do. And sometimes you tell me what God's going to do. But I've learned God's not bound by what you think or what I think. I come to him with a blank check. He can fill in how many zeros he wants in my life. Where he wants me to go, what he wants me to do, how he wants me. Listen, how he wants me to live and how he wants me to die. If he wants me to die a martyr, well, praise God. How many of you are praying, Lord, let me die a martyr's death? I'm at least praying, Lord, allow me to be completely used up when I die. I was talking about 6 years ago, I went to the doctor, and the doctor told me I had kidney cancer. It came out of the blue. I didn't have any symptoms. It was another test that showed it that was unrelated. She said, you need to sit down. I need to talk to you. I said, okay. She goes, you got kidney cancer. You know, well, kidney cancer, if it's all inside the kidney, it's pretty easy. They go in and take the kidney out. But if it's spread from there, it's a death sentence. They pretty much can't do much with kidney cancer once it's spread. So they took the kidney out. And in that process, I had somebody ask me, says, how long do you want to live? And I told them, I want to live until I die. You know, I've met a lot of people who quit living long before they died. And I'm not going to be one of those people. I'm just determined I want to live and I want to serve right up until I die. When they slide my body in that casket, I don't want there to be any ounce of energy left in me. I don't want there to be any usable part of my body. My wife says, don't you want to donate your body to science? I said, when I get done, I don't want there to be enough left to donate. I want to slide into that casket going, whew, it was a ride, wasn't it, baby? You know, let's go home. I don't want there to be anything left. How do you do that? You preach missionally. You talk about life outside the church. And I'm going to focus on that this afternoon. Okay? I said it yesterday, issue a call to missions. Issue a call to young people, to middle-aged people, to elderly people, a call to go overseas. You know, like I said, my wife answered the call when she was 10 years old to go overseas. I have a couple named the Chutes, C-H-U-T-E, Chutes. They answered the call at 59. And they went to Taiwan, and they're now moving to the Philippines in the next week. You understand? You don't know who's going to answer the call. And you can't tell by looking where God's working. You know, the ones you think are most ready may not be the ones that God calls. You'll have somebody jump up and come down going, I got to go. And you're going, who are you? You've never shown any interest in even teaching a class, and all of a sudden, God's slung this craving on you to go overseas, you know. You don't know where God's working, how God's working. You just need to give him the opportunity as the leader of the church. Make sense? Okay. Where do you go on these trips? Okay. That makes sense, right? You understand? Why do you do it? It'll change the church. It'll change your people in your church. It'll change the people that you're reaching. Now, I know all the excuses, right? That's not all the excuses, but that's the big ones, right? Too expensive, too far away. We got enough lost people right here. It's just easier to let those people go to hell. Our task is to go into all the world, into Jerusalem, all Judea, all Samaria, all the ends of the earth. We're not exempt from that call because we're old, or because we're comfortable, or because we're lazy. We have a responsibility to reach the ends of the earth. Some by going, some by giving, some by praying. But I don't think we're calling enough people to go. Where do we go? Using Judea, Samaria, all Jerusalem, all Judea, Samaria, ends of the earth. Using that, we're going to start doing missions right here. And again, for those of you who are pastoral, I'm not asking you to come to the backside of China on your first trip. The first thing you might do is look in your community and can you fix up the playground at the local school? You know, some kind of outreach thing that you can do, a missions project right there in your own community. The key thing you want, especially when you do local missions, is this. You want somebody to say, you know, I don't go to church anywhere, but if I were to go to church, I'd go to that guy's church. They did this for me. Let me give you an example. I have it put down to do it another place, but I'm going to do it right now. Here's a great ministry, a missions thing you can do right where you are. It doesn't cost a penny. You don't have to ask for approval from your church. You can do this today on your way home. You go into a restaurant, you sit down. First thing you do, ask your waitress her name. Sarah. Sarah brings food out and say, Sarah, we're about to eat. Can I pray for you as I pray for our food? You know how many times I've been turned down the last 2 years? Zero. I've had some go, well, I don't really have anything. You just pray for them. A couple weeks ago, Sarah said, I need you to pray for me. I've prayed for people to be able to get their children back from Health and Human Services. I've prayed for people who are going through divorces. Sarah said she's going through physical therapy. I said, okay. And so I thought there's more to this than whatever she said. But I said, then you pray listen to me, a simple, short prayer. Dear God, we're here together. I'm praying for our food, bless our food. But I'm asking you to bless Sarah. And in a very real way, God, today, show her that you love her. Amen. Can you read that? I can't. You need my glasses?
Nope, I got it. Thank you for praying over me. I was put on the spot, but I'm going through many things, physically and emotionally, that only God knows, and I can't tell you how much I needed to hear the Lord loves me today. Have a great day, and a smiley face.
If you're a pastoral person, this is made for you. You understand? This is a great way to be missional while you're pastoral. I'm going back to that restaurant again because I didn't particularly care for the food, but I really like Sarah, and I'm praying for her. I asked a church about a month ago, the sermon I'm going to preach tomorrow, this afternoon, I practiced on a church a couple of weeks ago. And at the end of them, I told them about this. I said, can you go out and just pray for somebody this next week? I want you to pray, not somebody you know. Pray for a stranger, okay? Somebody in Kroger's, somebody at the grocery store, somebody at the gas station, a restaurant worker. Just pray for somebody. And being the great man of faith I am, I told him, I said, next week I'm going to ask you how it went. And so, great man of faith I am, the next week I'm thinking, I don't know if I'll have one or two people. If it's a church of about 75 people, I'm thinking, I hope I have one or two. Well, I had 7 different people who did it. And every one of them said, you won't believe how easy this is to do. This was so simple. And people, and they look at me like it's some kind of amazing thing. They go, and these people like it. I've not done anything as a Christian that non-Christians have liked in 20 years. You know why? For 20 years, we've tried this. Open your mouth, lean back. I'm going to give you the gospel.
Right.
Okay? We learned EE, CWT, EIEIO, whatever the next program is on how to witness. All of them is how to shove this down their throat. I'm going to talk about this afternoon how Jesus saw the crowds. Praying with him. When I got done with Sarah, what did she think? I don't go to church anywhere. But if I was going to go to church, I'm going with that old man. He didn't cram the gospel down my throat. He listened, he loved, and he prayed. I should write that down. That's a sermon. I'm hoping I can remember it long enough that I can get home and write this down, because that'd make a sermon. He listened, he loved, he prayed. I know. I got to think now. How do I make that alliterate? Listen, love, pray. He something. I got boy. Lively prayer. yeah. Something goofy like that. That's why I never made a good preacher. I can never make the alliterations work. But you understand? No, my phone's not going to stop until I do that. Oh, Steve McVeigh is writing me. Okay. Thank you, Steve. He sent me the text so that I could remember. My phone dings every minute if I don't notice it, because a lot of times I don't hear it the first time. Not that I'm hard of hearing, but my wife does mumble a lot more than she used to. What I'm trying to tell you is, for those of you who have pastoral hearts, use that to your advantage to be missional. We're not asking you to do something extraordinary, except little pieces of love. They're extraordinary to Sarah. Now, I've got 5 minutes. I'm not going to do any more. I'm going to ask. Anybody have a question or a comment? Yes, sir.
Add to what you're saying. We've got some guys in our church that have decided they're a little older than what they were when they started doing this, but either 3 or 4 roofs in our community. We fixed it and we paid for it at our church, and it's just kind of amazing to see that some of the guys are going, that was a lot easier 10 years ago when we started doing this.
Yes.
And generally, it's non-church people. One was a church person. The first one was. After that, there've been non-church people that couldn't afford it.
Right.
Said, hey, can we do this for you? He looks at you like you're nuts.
That's what you want right there. You constantly want people to look at you like you're nuts. That's always been my desire. I want people to look at me like I'm nuts. I get that a lot, you know. But the thing is, love is such an unusual thing in today's world. People look at you like you're nuts when you do love. People, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. I've never heard anybody in this room preach. But I'm guessing that none of y'all are just world-class preachers. You don't have to be. You have to be. I hadn't heard you, you know. But you can be world-class people of love. People are going to come to your church, first of all, because they know somebody in your church. That means you have to have relationships with them. You have to get your people out making relationships. And then people are going to come because they know you or somebody in your church. And people are going to come to your church because they feel loved. I've never had anybody come to a church that I pastored or led going, I decided to come here because I heard y'all have some of the best preaching in the whole community. I hear that your church has the best music program, and we just want to come in and be wowed. No. I want to preach my sermon. I'm trying to save my sermon for this afternoon. But I want you to understand, people come in because they feel the love. There's Sarahs who are harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. And they come stumbling in the door of your church going, I need love. My world is falling apart. I need love. And when your church lives and practices love, it's very attractive to the community. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. There you go. It is so true. God already knows enough. You know, He needs people who will love. Any other questions or comments before I close? Look in your church and figure out, how can I move them one step? Ebu, Ebu, Ebu. Maybe we can start by getting our church to start praying. When you're known in the community as a church that prays, and I'm not talking about, oh, Heavenly Father, King of Creator of, I'm talking about, God, show Sarah you love her in a practical way today. When people in the community know that, they start calling you up, going, can you pray for me? They start stopping you in the dairy section at the grocery store going, can you pray for me? Thinking, the next time they have a crisis, where are they going? They're going to your church because you cared, you prayed, you loved. I'm done. Thank you. Let's go eat.